Okay, so this is the meeting of the trustees of the trust funds for Ashland, New Hampshire, August 24th, 2020, and this meeting is being recorded. I will begin by taking a roll call of those who are present. Walter Durack.
Present.
Dave Toth.
Present.
And Amanda Loud is also present. We are all three here, and we also have a quorum. Let me get to, I think the next thing on the agenda is the minutes. Review and approval of July minutes. I can put up a screen share real quick. Does anybody have any edits to make to these minutes?
I don't.
I don't either, but I have some things to point out once I try to remember how to run this. See, I haven't been in my teacher mode so much, so I'm not in my super, where's the screen? Oh, there it is. So I'm not in my super, got it all down with the Zoom bit. Okay, so here we go. On the minutes, I have nothing to, no edits to make as well, but I'd like to go through them just for updates. So we all have signatory authority. That's working well. We have the trustee portal is on the agenda. The investment policy is also on the agenda tonight. I have sent emails to both Sam, what's her last name? What's Sammy's last name?
Leahy.
Leahy. I knew it began with an L. I'm so sorry. Okay. I sent an email to Sam Leahy about the Blake Firefighters Association. I sent one to, oh gosh, Scott. Does that make sense? I could have told you his name if I weren't recorded on a meeting. Anyway, I sent it to the person of Memorial Park. Have not heard back from him. Have heard from Sam. Sam said that their next meeting was going to be September 2nd, which is coming up a week from Wednesday, September 2nd at 6 o'clock. Does that work for us to go to discuss the Blake Fund and its uses and how it's invested? Can you all be there?
I believe so. Is
On
it a
Wednesday?
meeting? Is it an in-person meeting?
I don't know. Wednesday, September 2nd, I just need to get back to Sam and tell her that that's a yay or a nay.
It would be an in-person meeting.
It's in person?
Mm-hmm. It's at the fire station at 6 p.m.
Okay. Okay. I know I can be there. And can you be there, Walter?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing that, we can't predict accurately right now is if there will be a quorum of association members.
Okay.
So we don't always have enough folks on the roster there to be able to conduct a meeting.
Well, I don't know, based on quorum needs, I don't know if the Blake Association, especially when we're there making, any presentation, I don't
Right.
believe that they would need to vote on anything. I don't think we need any recorded response from them.
Okay.
We just want to be able to open communication channels and talk to them about what's going on and what has gone on. And, going forward, they could contact us at a future date if they had anything that they voted on later.
Sure.
So I will email Sam then and tell her that we will be at the meeting, and that'll be 6 p.m. at the fire station. Okay, great. And I'll keep trying to get oh, he owns the tree company, Tree Solution.
Mark.
Thank you, Mark Liebert. I will try to get a hold of him. I'll re-email, try to get a hold of the Memorial Park.
Okay.
Another person I know, and I better just stop trying to say names. I know another one on there, and maybe I can get a hold of him. Anyway, okay. As far as the Ashland Library Trust Funds go, that had the very small balances. I did hear, and I think I don't know if I forwarded you the email if you were all on it, but Alice said that they have decided as a board of library trustees to leave the funds as they are for now and not to try to dissolve the trusts that are very small. I said you could go to Tom Donovan in Concord at the Attorney General's office and perhaps get some of these very small amounts dissolved as trusts and just, take the cash. And they said at this point in time, they wanted to keep them as they are. And so I said, well, we would do a better job of investing them. Although the amounts are very small, I don't know, that's kind of a Walter problem, if they would be able to be moved into any other funds or how they are invested, but they want to keep them as trusts at this time. I have not heard anything back from Tom Peters about the parameters of the scholarships, what the checkpoints are for, who gets a scholarship and why, how they're chosen. I do, as I pointed out last time, that the same 2 students who were picked by the Blake Fund were also picked to receive the 2 library scholarships, or that are, I say library, they're not library scholarships, but they're, Addison is one of them and Doggett is another. But anyway, I think that going forward, perhaps in January at our meeting, we need to put together a document, very short, on what we will have now as the parameters for these scholarships, like has to be an Ashland student, for example, or something like that, and how we will pick them. My experience on being on various scholarship committees is that the high school can pick them because they know the kids best, but we will discuss all of this, I think, at January meeting. We signed checks in August. That worked very well. And I believe that you all have received forwarded the email, or received an email also from Charlie and Eli that discussed what the lawyer's decision was about having a public meeting and a non-public meeting for us, which will be on September. I have it on our agenda. I think it's the 21st that we're in a public meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss gifts and the gifts to the town. So at any way, you all did receive.
Oh, looks like she's back.
Hey, I found you all again. Hi.
Yay!
Oh,
But everything just, I was yakking around and I looked and I noticed that both of you were just very still. And then when I asked a question, nothing happened. And I said, okay. And then I went blank. So here we go. I guess it's our weather that's probably going through. So anyway, as I was saying, did you all receive the email that talked about legal's decision that it would be make sure we are recording. It says we're recording. That legal said it would be a public meeting that we discussed with the Board of Selectmen on gifts to the town and management of said gifts. The main thrust of the council was to remain vague, not to mention anything specific. My concern, speaking for myself, isn't necessarily anything that is specific, but has tended to have been a history of not following beneficiaries' desires. So anyway, benefactors' desires. So at any rate, I think, I don't know how much the Board of Selectmen have control over this. I think it's just, in my opinion, bringing something to light and hopefully can proceed in a more positive direction from there. So going back, so that will be in September. Other than that, I just wanted to use those minutes as kind of to give some general update for that. Okay, onward. Revised investment policy, and I have.
are we going to approve the minutes or?
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. So Dave has now moved that we approve the minutes, and I second that. Does anyone have any discussion on this? Okay, so then all in favor, it has to do by roll call. Dave Toth.
Aye.
Walter.
Aye.
And Amanda Loud also votes aye. So the minutes are approved. Thank you. Kind of threw me for being cut off from the meeting. That's going to be my excuse. We could blame COVID, but we'll just make that the excuse tonight. Maybe COVID did it. Okay. The investment policy, I put this in our Google folder, and I'm going to pull this up real quick and share it so we can look at it. I made a few minor edits to it. Put Ashland in instead of, I think, Merrimack or something, because Dave, thank you very much, made some change, added additions from an existent, very good existent policy. So I think at this, I will just start reading through, and when you want to change something, holler. Okay. The trustees of the trust funds have fiduciary responsibility for several accounts: Ashland Capital Reserves and Expendable Trust Funds, Cemetery Funds, Ashland School District Capital Reserves and Expendable Trust Funds, and Town and District Non-Restricted Trusts, including any Ashland School District scholarships, which do not exist right now, but I put it in, I left it in, worded it that way. I think it was in, and I kind of worded it a little bit just so, like, if something happens in the, I can't seem to make any, anyway, we'll deal with that later. The overarching objective is to protect principal from loss, including loss of purchasing power, while generating income sufficient to support the programs intended to be financed under terms of the trust documents. As fiduciaries, trustees have a duty of loyalty to the public interest, a duty of care to exercise diligence and conscientiousness in the management of trust funds, and a duty of obedience to New Hampshire statutes, to donors' intent, and to sound administrative procedures. I really like that. I'd like to add. I thought that was very good.
Mm-hmm.
Current policy is that all funds are invested under the prudent person rule as defined in RSA 3125B. This traditional investment standard makes preservation of principal the highest priority among trustee objectives. Now, I put this in the other day. Because of this, the trustees consider it imprudent to spend more than 3% of the value of any trust in any given year. Now, I added that because that has been, as we've discovered historically, the problem was massive overspending. Just because there's 13,000 and you spend 1,000, you can't spend 1,000 if you have only 13,000. So I don't know how you all feel about that, but that's why I put that in. And I felt that wording that it was imprudent to do it didn't mean that it was impossible to do it, just not a good idea.
Right. The one thing we might consider, instead of saying 3% of the trust's market value is spending any more than the income generated by the investments. It's a thought, that does limit you to sometimes less than 3%. I'm not saying we have to word it, but it's a thought as a potential. So we're not hanging ourselves on a number per se, but saying we're not going to spend more than the income generated speaks more to that principal preservation point.
Okay, and I agree with you. I'm looking forward to this 10 years from now, when maybe none of us are still trustees.
Sure.
And there's another group, and it can be difficult because, as Tom Donovan's letter, this is going back to Scribner, which will be, of course, another meeting, but his reading of the town report, for example, with Scribner, was showing that the principal was the way the trustees put together the page in the town report, it showed the income, and then it had a total of 182,000. He picked a year where there was 182,000 in the Scribner Trust, and he said, well, clearly now the principal is 182,000, the income was 5,000. But that's not what those numbers say in that town report. What those numbers say in the town report is that 5,000 is part of that 182,000. That 182 is not the principal. So the ability to differentiate between principal and income has historically been very foggy.
Sure.
And continues to be foggy. And Pache, Tom Donovan, I'm sure he's far more intelligent than I am in person, but I can just tell you right now, he's not reading that page correctly in the town report. And that's why I like having that 3% in there myself, because it's a really easy way not to have to do foggy math. You know, you look at it and it's either more than 3% or it's not more than 3%, even though it may be at a loss of, you know, minus 2% that year. You know, that's kind of going by that 3% general rule of thumb that, you know, some years it could be up 15%, but you still spend only 3.
Okay.
I mean, that's my reasoning for wanting to keep that. You know, it's just, I think it's a, and I like what you wrote, you know, north it was in any given year or more than the income generated. So number 2, so we can certainly go back and change that but that's my argument for keeping that 3% in.
Okay.
Objective: trustees manage investable funds with highest emphasis on safety while attentive to the liquidity needs of the account holders, town government, and school administration. Ordinarily, this entails investment in a mix of fixed income securities for yield and equities for offsetting the effects of inflation. Investment authority and responsibility. There are 3 trustees of trust funds, one elected annually for a 3-year term. That doesn't make any sense. There are 3 trustees of the trust funds elected annually for 3-year terms. Oh, I understand what that says now. Okay, never mind. Now I understand. One elected annually for, okay, I understand it. Okay. Trustees meet, it's been a long day. Trustees meet at least quarterly, but review investments and policies regularly. Investments may be made only in approved instruments and securities as defined in RSAs 31 through 35 inclusively. All accounts are audited annually and reported in the town report. Ashland accounts. These accounts, funded by town appropriation, are public monies and are invested primarily in pooled cash and cash equivalents, notably FDIC insured bank money market accounts. The New Hampshire Public Deposit Investment Pool remains the default vehicle for publicly appropriated trusts. Okay, so those are the CRFs. Okay. Cemetery perpetual care. The original principal of the various accounts remains proportionately constant. We have big problems in Ashland. The cemetery, whatever. Okay, but this is the ideal. The interest earned on these accounts may be used by request of cemetery maintenance for the specific intent of each account, but only to the limit of its proportionate earnings. The accounts are invested to maximize interest. Okay. Library trust funds, original person remains constant. Okay, this is the same thing as the cemetery. Okay. Expendable capital reserve funds. Those are the CRFs. Okay. Agency trust accounts. Okay. Scholarship trust funds. The original principal of the accounts remains constant. The interest earned on these accounts may be used for scholarship awards when the amount of $500 minimum is available from earnings. Awarded in accordance with the original intent of the scholarship. I like that. I like that it set the amount at 500 myself. I think, you know, otherwise, you know, I mean, you can give smaller amounts, but anymore, a smaller amount just is almost insulting.
Well, yes. I also am worried as we're going through some of these smaller funds that what we found with Scribner and, you know, as we're working through the definition of principal and what should actually be in there for the principal, I think we're going to the same issue with some of these smaller funds. So throttling that back to 500, you're correct. It's still generous without being cheap,
Right.
but is going to help restore those funds to a place where they should be.
Right.
And that also means that you may not be awarding the scholarship every year.
Yes.
Also,
so then Memorial Park and Blake and Scribner all say about the same thing. Mutual funds to enhance potential growth. Asset allocation, I thought this was very good. No more than 55%, equities no more than 65%, and cash equivalents no more than 40%. It doesn't add up to 100% because it's just stating that it would be no more than that.
yeah, it gives you some room to rebalance if you need to.
Yeah. Let's see, investments in registered investment companies holding mixed allocations shall be included pro rata on the basis of their asset allocations. This is just like mutual funds, okay. Constraints and limitations. Individual investments in fixed income securities shall be managed such that their maturity shall not exceed 12 years. So this is just to keep from getting hit with, oh, what is it when you hold something too long and then you got to pay a lot of taxes when you sell it?
Long-term capital gains.
Capital gains, that's what I was thinking of, yes.
Yep.
So this
Actually,
is...
the longer you hold something, the better off, because you pay it, if you hold it less than a year, it's
you
taxed.
get hit hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the short-term capital gains that you want to avoid.
Right, right. But I like the
what the
idea
problem
of
with-
not exceeding.
The problem with holding something too long with fixed income is that if you're if you don't buy it at the right time, and yields move one direction or the other, you can get stuck with something that's worth a lot less. And so short and intermediate, which is how I intend to set up the Scribner, and would presume that Memorial and Blake would follow a similar portfolio scheme, is that they were short and intermediate. So nothing was in there more than 8 years. I believe even in the intermediate, the average was 5 years duration. So.
Investments in fixed income should be evaluated based on the same idea. Okay, this is full duration up to 12 years. I don't know why the spacing like that got funny. Each individual fixed income security shall have a quality rating of single A category or higher. That's standard there. Investments, weighting of debt instruments, aforementioned categories. Investments in registered investment companies shall have a significant weighting of debt instruments in the aforementioned categories. Only a de minimis in any non-investment grade security shall be. Okay, so what this means that the companies that you invest in also have to be, well, they would, if they have a AA rating on their stock, then they're going to fulfill this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
this matters a lot more when you're talking about buying individual corporate bonds and even government agency bonds.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but in a mutual fund, they've got, and you certainly can verify with the prospectus, but they're going to go with that rating and higher.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Not
generally, investment grade is going to be that AA or better.
Right. Concentrations not to exceed 10%. So in other words, we can't have 30% of our holdings in, Wells Fargo or something, which is just prudent.
Yeah.
Equity portion, diversified broadly. Okay. No, this is just, again, prudent.
Yep. That basically wouldn't take $100,000 and put, invest $30,000 in Apple and $50,000 in one treasury bill and then put the rest in cash. That's not a very good idea.
Oh, that would be very upsetting. Liquidity matters, but risk should be minimized. Okay, I think this is really very nice. What does everyone else think?
I think it really answers a lot of the concerns that we've had about the way things had been managed. And if they had followed this, things would be a lot different.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. Thank you, Dave. This has really been very nice. I know that you cut and pasted, from some existing, but it's very nice. I think it covered all the areas.
Yeah, well, I cut and pasted. I didn't edit for content. I just put things together, and where there were glaring glaring grammatical errors, I corrected those. But
yeah.
Thank you.
There's some of the you know, some of the spacing and the margins and stuff are a little off on this. I don't know why, but
I wouldn't worry about it.
we can correct those. But I'm happy that we have this.
Yeah, well, I would like then, let's make sure that we do have it. And so I make a motion that we accept this as our new investment policy. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have any discussion on this matter? Keep in mind that we are supposed to review it annually so that as we move forward, if next year we find that, you know, we want to add something or erase something or maybe take out my 3%, which I'm a little bit adamant about right now, that we could certainly do that at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's an annual review. So does anyone have any other discussion?
No, I think it gets reviewed by the
Attorney General's office.
Yeah, so, you know, I think once we approve it and then we can send it to them for review.
Right.
You know, if they accept it, then, you know, we are assured that it's appropriate.
Okay, well then I will now call for a vote on accepting this as our investment policy of the Ashland Trustees of the Trust Funds. Walter Durack.
Aye.
Dave Toth.
Aye.
And Amanda Loud also votes aye. So this will be, I will contact the Attorney General's office and email it to whoever needs to have it, and we will go from there. Next up on the agenda is the Trustee Portal. So you, Dave, also looked into this Trustee Portal.
Right.
And this is where the MS9 and MS10 goes.
Right, right. And basically, all it really is an online tool for filing MS9 and MS10.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get ready to do that, that's when you can learn about, you know, you sort of have to learn it as you're doing it. You can go through the instructions, but basically what it allows you to do is to complete the MS9 and MS10 if we need to do that. And then rather than having to redo it every year, you can use that as a template and then just make the changes that are necessary and refile it again. And you always have all of your records, all of your MS9 and MS10 filings online so that they're easily available to you.
Well, what I've been looking for, and I've just pulled up your email, and I don't have the attachments of the MS9 and the MS10 on it. I don't know what I did with them. I don't think I put them on my lap. No, I don't have it on my desktop. But I did send an email to Charlie, and I looked at them. Walter, did you look at these MS9s and MS10s on the kinds of information that it wants?
Briefly, I haven't really studied them.
Okay. I can't find
it. Didn't seem like the 10 applied to us, and
that was 10. See, I sent Charlie an email and said, "What's the difference between an MS9 and an MS10?" Because I looked in the town report. I have a town report here, and it has just MS9 in our town report. But if I looked at the MS10, I thought they might be CRFs, but the CRFs are on the MS9.
Yeah. So I mean, if we've only filed MS9s in the past, I mean, there's an indication that we don't really have to file an MS10, but we can certainly use the filings from last year to start our process of getting the information together for this year. The thing that I wanted us to realize is that because we're changing over accounts, that we're going to have all the old information, you know, and you know what the account value was at the beginning, and when we close that out,
Yeah.
and all the fees and everything that we paid. And then we're also going to have the new information. So the new start date and so forth. So
Right.
that's going to complicate things a little bit.
Yeah.
I did notice that the filing is not until March.
Right. Right. Well, actually, yeah, I think, but it ends, I think it's a calendar year that it ends on. It's through December 31st. They
It's
just give you until March to get it done.
March. And I would say it would probably behoove us to get it done as soon as we
Possibly
get
can.
it done and get it in.
Yeah.
So that if we, I'm not great at filling out forms. So if we make a mistake, we can get some feedback from them.
Right.
And,
Right.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm on DRA's website right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I found some information, it looks like. So the MS-9 is used to report the status of each individual trust and capital reserve fund held in the custody of trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we have custody of would go on the MS-9.
Okay, so that's everything.
Right. MS-10 is when the principal and or accumulated income of separate trust funds are commingled and invested in common for the purpose of facilitating growth of investments or obtaining more reasonable income. The trustees of trust funds shall file Form MS-10. Only common trust fund investments are reported on this form.
Now, we don't have anything all mingled up. I mean,
No,
well, we have.
We have things all messed up, but not mingled.
Okay. But that is an interesting thing, and just to put bees in our bonnet, so to speak. If it would be possible to combine, and I'm thinking this primarily with those smaller trusts that are for the benefit of the library.
That's exactly I was going. Yeah. Yep.
If we could pull that all together, I think 2 of the 3 are restricted to books.
Right.
But at any rate, that might be something positive for the library if we could, because they're so low, we can almost not transfer them out of something.
Right.
Yeah, and that might be a conversation with Tom Donovan and his staff, is saying, we have some really small funds, they want to keep them, but based on the restrictions and whatnot, are these candidates for being commingled? Because in the end, they ultimately serve the library. It's the same beneficiary.
Right.
There are some restrictions on there, but
the restrictions may keep them from being mingled, and I'll tell you why. One is restricted, I think, to books.
Right.
And I think the other is specifically books on New Hampshire history.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And I think that might just squash that idea.
Right.
There is a possibility of being able maybe to put Doggett and Addison together, because they're both, as far as I can tell, non-restricted scholarship funds.
Right.
Or if there are any restrictions on them, I've seen the wills, I've seen, of both, and there's no restrictions other than that they are for scholarships. So having no other parameters or restrictions on those scholarships, that might be something we could do, since Doggett is less than $2,000. We could combine that with Addison, which I think is somewhere around 13. Yep. And that might help growth, and it also might help better define scholarships in Ashland. Once you can start, and I discovered this during my time, was when I was president of Friends of the Holderness Library. If you can just, are you all there? You all went very still. Okay, David's still there. Are you there, Walter?
I'm here.
Okay. I'm really on edge with the Zoom tonight. But what I've discovered,
there have been problems nationwide.
Nationwide, yeah. What I was saying, what I've discovered with my time there is that if you have like a fund that everyone can just give to in memory of someone or whatever as a gift, and then you establish the scholarship fund, and that's often far more profitable and does far more than having 17 little tiny things that never generate enough money to give anything away. Right. So that's something that we might want to discuss with the library and with the Attorney General's office, or combining those 2 scholarship funds and not trying to give out separately named scholarships, but see if we can't combine them so that we actually have the corpus needed to give out a scholarship.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's for once. I think though that Dave's words are also, we need to heed about moving things, and that this will cause extra work on this.
Yes.
So we may want to consider trying to get the big three moved before December 31st, the big three being Scribner, Blake, and Memorial Park.
Mhm.
And then deal with that. And then in 2021, hit the ground running in January and try to clean up, all the little stuff everywhere. Some of them we may be able to combine and whatnot.
Yep.
That might be a healthier mindset, so it's not so overwhelming. Okay, so great. I have to say, Walter, I think we're going to really depend upon you a lot with this MS9, because you seem to understand more of what to put in the blanks than Dave or I
There's
do.
actually, yeah, I found it on DRA's website under all the forms, because they have the MS9 and the MS10, and then there's a combined MS9 and 10, and it has instructions on how the forms
Okay.
work. So
Okay.
absolutely, I can help with that.
Well, I want to learn how to do it. I don't want you to be the only person that understands how to fill this in, but I'm going to expect you to take the lead role on this.
Sure.
And then
Once
just
it's,
please, you have to teach us.
yeah, but once it's in the system,
That's true.
Be a lot.
then it's just a matter of editing it every year.
Yes.
Right.
Which is really great. So I think whatever work we all do in getting it put together for this year is going to save lots of work in the long run.
Yes.
Oh, I agree. Okay, review of trusts, balances, and investments. So the larger trusts, I think we've kind of talked about those a bit. The smaller trusts, we kind of talked about those a bit. Does anyone have any questions about a specific trust before we move to Green Grove Cemetery in Cremingsbury? Okay, so I am now going to open up a very large can of worms. Probably one of the bigger ones I've opened up so far, and I've opened up a few. Let me see. I've got this all in where I can, yeah, it's a scary thought, isn't it? I've got, here we go, cemetery. Let me hit the screen share.
Well, this isn't a can of worms. These are night crawlers.
Is that bigger?
Maybe
bigger
using the metaphor of worms for a cemetery trust now.
Exactly. Okay, so in the Google file, I have put under, all this is under cemetery. Click on cemetery and it goes into all of this. So we are in a unique situation in the town of Ashland. And by unique, I mean that in the true sense and definition of that word. We are the only town in the entire state of New Hampshire that has privatized our town cemetery. And that happened with a vote of the people, I don't know when, a while back. So our trustees, our cemetery trustees, are truly in name only, with no duties, because we have privatized it. That's about all I understand. And when I asked Charlie, that's what he told me. So
They have no
worm number one.
Jurisdiction over Green Grove. That's basically what it means.
We have no jurisdiction, but we hold the funds. Now,
Yeah.
I would like to start this kind of showing what's going on. Here's Green Grove. I get the investment every month. I get the investment page every month, a statement. And so the Green Grove Cemetery Fund has approximately 17,000 in it, 17,343.48. This is the latest. This is as of July 31st. And hold on, Walter, I can show you how it's invested. Got the second page, if I can get over to it. And this is how it's invested. It is in Washington Mutual Investors Fund. There you go. Now, it has not had, as far as I can tell, it has not had any checks written on it. It's no money has gone out and no money has gone in. And this is, as far as, I mean, it's at UBS, and there it sits. Now, the Cremmingsbury is in the same situation. Cremmingsbury is actually graves. I went and found them, and I took pictures of them. And it has about 7,000 in it, 6,793.98. And this, you can see it has trustees who one's deceased. So it's not much has gone on for a while. And here is how it's invested.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's not what we want to hear.
Oh.
Okay. So Walter has issues.
Yeah, it's 96% equities and 3.9% cash equivalent.
Okay. Well, the good news is, I guess, in one sense of the word, is that the Crimmings and Berries are deceased. But
Okay.
we're going to be if we think about it too much. I went and looked for these burial grounds. Here's Crimmins. Oh, I misspelled it. This is Crimmins. There is no wall around it. They've got 7,000. They left this money in perpetual care a long, long time ago. And when you look into the paperwork, this is the paperwork that I've received from the state. And this is the paperwork from the state on Green Grove Cemetery. You get these cards that have, here's Lizzie Culver, and she left $50. I don't know what date it was when she died and left $50 perpetual care in her will. Here's one for Benjamin Dean. Here's one for Susan Dean, spelled a little differently. She left $300, 1931. Okay, so that's when she died, and it was in her will. And Philip Marston left $500 in 1967 for lots 254 and 413. And then Eugenia Ordway, never could find her tomb, $50 in 1926. And that's it. That's all the paperwork for the state of New Hampshire has on Green Grove Cemetery. So I went and I found these, what I could find. I went one day and I talked to a man named Gilly who was cutting the grass. He works there, and we went through all the cards, and he showed me the map, and he let me take the giant map in my car so I could find my way around. So here's Dean, and there's Benjamin, and there was Susan Dean, and so there's another Dean, here. And the perpetual care funds, the way that works is, when people die, even today, they will leave however much money in their will, $50 or something, to take care of their grave site. This is Marston's here on the right. You can see 1932. So I tracked them all down, is my point, but I couldn't find all of them. And I sent you all pictures of the ones that I could find. But what has me concerned in a way is Green Grove Cemetery is way more than 9 burial plots. But I think we have, is it 9 cards from the state? That's the only information we have on perpetual care. Now, we are not being solicited by Green Grove for funds. I don't know where the money's coming from to take care of the cemetery. Now, I asked Gilly, the man was a very nice man. He works for the cemetery. And I asked him, how do you know who's got perpetual care and who doesn't have perpetual care? Because when I was looking at these graves, I knew they had perpetual care because I had the name in my hand from the state of New Hampshire. And that none of them, I would like to be very clear, none of the graves looked like they were in disrepair. Everything looked very good. They were all in extremely good condition. But I asked Gilly, how do you know, if there's going to be the money to repair something, should something, fall over or crack or whatever? And he said, oh, that's easy. They say so on the monument. And then he turned around and he pointed to a large monument, the picture of which I will not put up in this recorded meeting because I do not have permission of the family to do it. But you've seen it. and it says, it's chiseled into the stone on the side, perpetual care. I mean, you can read it at 30 feet. I mean, it's not like you have to wonder, you know, it's very clear. But there was no card in the state information for that particular grave. So, you know, this is beyond maybe night crawlers. This might be anacondas, you know. I don't know what is going on with Green Grove. I know that we've got 2 trusts that value somewhere between 17,000 and another one's at about 7,000. I can also say, because I took pictures and I went, you know, tracked this down and looked at them, that none of the graves are in any way in disrepair. They are very well taken care of. I feel that the intent of...
Have we lost Amanda again?
I think so.
Well, as far as I know, at least when I was on the Water and Sewer Commission, Ernie Paquette was in charge of the cemetery.
Yep.
And Rusty Cross was part of that group too, and Rusty always did a lot of work over there.
Right.
You know, Ernie and Rusty took care of a lot of the burials. But I don't know whether Ernie is still in that position or not.
I don't know if he is. I don't believe he is. But well, what's not known to us is how that's being paid for, because I'm sure they're volunteer time, but you know,
they would know. They should obviously know how they're paying for stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so we should really contact them and let them know, because I wonder if they're even aware that this money exists.
They may not be. I think that's a valid point.
I mean, if it did exist, if they did know it, they should be withdrawing it when they need it.
Right.
So, and I don't know what perpetual care means. Does it mean that, you know, they're paying to keep the grounds around the stones in good shape, or does it mean that it's for the repair of the stones themselves?
Not sure. I'm looking that up right now. Okay, so it's a fund put together to help maintain cemetery grounds, graves, crypts, mausoleums, etc. Families of people buried in cemetery grounds contribute towards these funds to ensure the place is clean, well maintained, and secure. So basically, it's what cared for the graves and
Okay.
you know, the grounds. So it was, yeah, it was partly your gravestone, but more the grounds around. So kind of, for lack of a better term, like condo fees in a condo.
Sure. Okay.
All right. So apparently Amanda can't get back into Zoom. That is bizarre.
Well, I'm back.
All right, there we go.
Oh,
Just no, Dave and I were still here.
well,
Somehow
I
it made
got cut
Dave
off.
after the first time you conked out.
I thought this was hysterical after I finished my diatribe on all the problems. The cemetery, it cut me off. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody's listening and pulled my plug. Anyway, okay, so as I said, as I finished, I don't know what all you heard, but what I said was I don't understand why we have 17,000 in Green Grove, 7,000 in Crimmins-Berry, seem not to be petitioned to use these funds. I can understand with Crimmins-Berry, it's just for one, you know, plot, and I guess, you know, the tombstone would have to fall over or something to need $7,000 for it. I understand that. But I also don't understand why we have only information on 9 plots, 3 of which I couldn't even find, I think. I mean, they just weren't even on the map. Gilly helped me. He knows the cemetery very, very well, as you can imagine. And I don't understand why I physically see, when I go to the cemetery, I physically see perpetual care carved into numerous stones, the information of which is not with the state.
Mm-hmm.
But we have privatized our cemetery. I mean, I don't see the cemetery in disrepair. I would say that, as Walter's pointed out, the funds, just from a fiduciary standpoint, should be better invested. I'm not quite sure where perpetual care funds are going on the ones that we don't have the information on.
Okay.
I don't know if this is something we want to try to fight or not. I don't know if it comes under our purview.
Well, are the private trustees of the cemetery aware that these funds are available to them?
Are there private trustees? You mean the cemetery trustees? Or yeah, we have cemetery trustees in Ashland. However, unlike all the other cemetery trustees in every single town in New Hampshire except Ashland, our cemetery trustees are in name only and have no duties. That's what I've been told.
Well, actually, they do have duties, because there are other cemeteries in town.
Oh, okay.
Other than Green Grove, and Green Grove is a private operation, but those funds were meant for those graves. And my question is, do the people who run this Green Grove, are they aware that this money is still available to them?
I don't know. I can say, as you can see from the pictures, that the graves are taken very, well care of.
Yeah.
I do not know. I don't know if they know that. I guess it would have to be prorated. Some left 300. It was a larger area. Some left $50. Some left $50 in 1926. So that's a lot of money today, 100 years later.
But if they left the $50 in 1926, where is it?
Well, it's in the Green Grove Cemetery account. It's part of that 17,000.
Oh, part of the 17,000.
Yes, yeah. So this is a combined, that 17,000 Green Grove are those 9. God, I wrote them all down. So I could look at them. Yeah. So we have Lizzie Culver, which I could not find her grave anywhere. Benjamin Dean, Susan Dean, Philip Marston, but he paid for 2 different ones, and I found all of them, and I couldn't find Eugenia Ordway. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I take that back. We have 5, 3 of which I could find.
Right. Well, because it's private, the cemetery is now private, we shouldn't be holding those funds.
That is a good point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or it would seem to me that we shouldn't be holding them.
That's a very good point.
That they should be turned over to the trustees, whoever the trustees of Green Grove are. I believe Rusty Cross is one of them. And I'm not sure who is in charge over there anymore. It used to be Ernie Paquette, but
that's a very good point, Dave. Maybe this is a point that when we are before the Board of Selectmen in September, that we point this out. I don't know where we begin with, I am all for getting rid of, there's 11 trusts, and let me tell you, it's just, oh my gosh. And as people talk about Scribner, I'm like, look, the other 10 aren't looking any better,
Right, yeah.
Oh gosh. But I think that this is a very valid point. I think you're right. We should not be the trustees of this, because it is a privatized cemetery.
And when the town voted to make it private. All of these trusts should have been included at that time in the warrant, and apparently they weren't. So I'm not sure how this has to be handled, and maybe this is a question for Charlie to go to legal and find out.
Mm-hmm. I think that when we go before them in September, that I will put this in the paperwork as well, that we want to discuss this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea. That just made me very happy. And what made Walter happy too, because he wasn't happy with what he saw. Now it could be not Walter's problem.
Like that.
That is a very good point. That is a very good point. So before I get cut off from Zoom for a third time, let's see. We have our meeting with the Board of Selectmen on September 21st. And I'll put this 9/21/20 in my notes so I know what to do. And I have next meeting, and I have a question mark because I don't know if we need to have another meeting anytime soon. We are all set on what we're doing with Blake and Memorial and Scribner, getting that moved over and reinvested. We are, the stuff that's at UBS, I think, Walter, after you get moved, the big three, begin on that. We want to get that also. And some of it may be able to be combined and rearranged somewhat. And if we get rid of Crimmings-Berry and Green Grove, that shortens our list. So as far as our next meeting, we meet with the Board of Selectmen on the 21st of next month. I don't know if we does anyone want to meet before we meet with them, or do we feel that we're ready to go with that, or on the same page, or, if not, then, I could foresee not meeting again until maybe January, unless Charlie, sends an email that says he has CRFs that he needs.
Or if any other issues come up.
Or if any issues come up, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do we have an agenda for our meeting on the 21st?
Not from the BOS. I know that we are on the agenda.
Do we have an agenda of what we're going to discuss? Well,
we're going to discuss the handling, and again, vaguely, we're going to discuss the handling of gifts. That my concern has been that there have been some specific tangible gifts, the records of which I can no longer find, seem to disappear. And then long ago, with statutes of limitations long run out, I mean, it's just it's a dead end, but nonetheless, this happened. And then great concern also over the funds that are given to the town and not reaching the beneficiaries. This is true for 3 library trusts that were put on perpetual reinvestment. Mm-hmm. And I do know the library told me, and Sarah Weinberg has shown me the letter. She kept them in her file of repeated petitions that the library made to trustees at the time, wanting to know if they could have the funds from these gifts, and were told no. And that's simply not true. They were on a perpetual reinvest, and the dividends, the income of it was never being allowed to surface and never being allowed to be given to the library. So it does appear that, places like Memorial Park, for example, and Blake are benefiting from the benefactor's request, but there's these 3 in particular, Addison, Ordway, and Cheney, they were not receiving anything for decades, of 20, 30 years. And that's not right, and I think that we need to make a public presence of fiduciary responsibility of people giving money to the town, and it's going to go and fulfill the wishes of the benefactor. It's very, very upsetting to me. I want there to be clear lines of gifting, which is another reason I thought combining the scholarship is a great idea, because you can just put your $50 or in memoriam or whatever, you have to grow something, but there needs to be clear lines of gifting, and it needs to be publicly acknowledged, and there needs to be some kind of public, more than a town report, because people just don't look at the town report. There has got to be some kind of reckoning, public reckoning, annually, biannually, that the gifts are finding their way to their beneficiaries.
Well, as far as we're concerned as trustees, all of that should be in the town report every year.
I agree, but the problem has been.
It hasn't been, has it?
No, well, it's been in the town report. I found them. I found these. And in fact, when I became a trustee and I sat at the library, for like 3 or 4 hours one afternoon back in April of 19, I pulled Sarah over and I said, what's the deal with this? This is library. What's the deal with this? And she said, that's when she showed me her folder saying, we have repeatedly been asking for these funds and we're not getting them. And then I started to make up, I hadn't seen the paperwork beyond what I saw from Sarah's letters petitioning, which were letters not from Sarah, but from the library trustees. And so I said, there's a possibility that, they won't, that the way it's invested will not release a check unless it's at least $50 or at least $100. I mean, there could, I was trying to think of how could it possibly be possible, and that was a possibility. It turns out that was not the way it was, that it just was on a perpetual reinvestment and was being ignored. And that I think that's a horrible precedent to be making, and that we want to encourage people to love their town and the agencies in their town and to remember them in their wills if possible. And I think this is a big detraction on that.
I absolutely agree. In making, part of what we all wanted for the trustees is to make what we do transparent.
Yes.
Because what I find kind of strange is there's no local oversight of the trustees.
Yes.
There's nobody looking at the trustees at that level. So the town, the Board of Selectmen doesn't have oversight.
Mm-hmm.
The town clerk doesn't have oversight. The town manager doesn't have oversight.
Mm-hmm.
The AG's office has the oversight. But I mean, they're only looking at big picture stuff.
Right. They want to be fine.
Yeah. And they're not looking at this level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact that people gave money for the care of their cemetery plots and the money has never been used is troubling.
Yes. Yeah. Or we don't know that it's never been used. It seems unclear, at least in the paperwork that I can see, dating back maybe 10 years or 20 years, but again, I want to make a point that the graves were in excellent condition.
But the whole trail of things is from its original intent to what's happened now, the trail of a lot of this stuff has been lost.
Very murky. I've spent over 6
very
hours
murky.
going through
And
stuff.
it really is, most of it, I think, is up to us as trustees to correct that problem so that, it doesn't happen in the future. I'm not sure what the Board of Select can do or should do, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
But record keeping in all of these, in all of the agents, in all of the facets of government that I've been involved in has left a lot to be desired. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
When I went to water and sewer, there was supposed to be a filing cabinet where the commissioners had all of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went over there to get it, there were no records in it.
Oh my gosh.
And all the records were just thrown in, all the other records were just thrown in filing cabinets. And, Eli reorganized things as best he could, but we had, you sort of lose track of the whole history of things. And that's what's kind of happened here too.
That's exactly what's happening. I mean, I spent over 6 hours up in what I guess used to be called the Scribner room. And I mean, you know, if you want a phone bill from 1973, I can help you out. But if you want, you know, anything more than that, 73, it can be pretty hard to find. So, you know, it's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I think that by going before the BOS, though, that it is an act of transparency. It is an act of making a public record, a public note. It puts it in more minutes than our minutes. And, you know, people do watch the BOS meetings. They do watch the trustees. Oh, I wanted to add that they do watch the trustees meeting. I forgot to say this. I check our mail account about once a week, once every other week on our main page, on the Ashland town page. And we got a very nice email from a townsperson. I will not make the name public because, you know, the person who sent it didn't specify one way or the other. And anyway, but just saying how much that this person appreciated watching our meetings and seeing that we are, you know, moving forward and doing things in a very positive manner. So I just wanted to put that word of encouragement out. But nonetheless, I think more people do watch, understandably so, the BOS meetings and the smaller committee meetings. And I think going before them in a public meeting, to be careful how we phrase things,
Right.
does make it makes it more transparent. You know, this has not been going well, and we want it to go better because, you know, people should take pride in their town and should be able to give to the library or to the Firefighters Association or to, you know, whatever else might come, you know, the Booster Club. I don't know. I mean, I'm just pulling things out, Park and Rec, or, you know, whatever we've got, you know, that they need to know that their funds are going to be used as they desire and not ignored.
And that they're going to be properly managed. And
Properly managed, yeah.
going to be a record kept that shows that their funds go for the original intent for which they gave them. And that's the difficult part, you know,
Right.
because, and I think, you know, knowing a little bit about how things have been done in the past, usually a lot of these positions were held by the same person for many, many years. And so all of the corporate knowledge was in their head.
Right.
But not on paper and not in the filing cabinets.
Right.
And so, yeah, so we need to compensate for that ourselves. But one of the other things too about gifts like the Emma Scribner gift is that I'm not sure there was ever enough money in that trust to properly take care of that building. And, you know, when you accept a gift,
Yeah.
when the town accepts a gift,
Yeah.
you really need to look at that gift very carefully.
Yeah.
Because, you know, what is happening now is that the town is going to have to take over responsibility for that.
Yeah.
She never intended that to happen.
Right. I think if you think of it in terms of $1936 or whenever this was 39, something like that, 40,500 probably was.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, going through and looking at the amount of funds that, I mean, I've seen a lot of records in the past few months going through. I mean, I went through all of that stuff. And the balance was fairly, of course, the building has needed a lot of work, but the balance was good and pretty healthy. And it seemed like things were going in a pretty good direction up until somewhere around 97, 98. And then the numbers start to get foggy. I think the same numbers on the town reports were submitted for 99 and 2000 or something like that, 2000, 2001. There's 2 years where you look at it and you go, wait, they're identical. And then, which means one of them isn't right. And then there's a following year where the numbers don't add right. I don't know if that's 01, 2000. It's at 98, 99, 2000, something like that. If you pull the town reports, there's a 3-year period where 2 of them are identical. So one isn't right. And then the 3rd year, the numbers don't add up right. Like, you just get out a calculator, it doesn't add right. It's off by thousands. It's not right. And then, from what I can tell, that's when the things started to really begin to tank. And the point of tanking on this thing was actually when it was at like 182,000. I mean, that was the point to start screaming, help, this is bad. But if you look at a chart over the past 20 years, 182 is like really high, so I think that I think, Dave, that there probably was enough in 1939 or 37, but that you have to have, fortunately, very good management of funds.
And it probably, our tendency has been not to analyze things like that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a lesson for the town in general about gifts, accepting gifts, what the implication of those gifts are, how they need to be managed, and so forth, so that they don't become a burden to the town.
Right. I think that I would propose then on September 21st, because I think you have said this very eloquently and accurately. Would you mind, being our spokesman on the 21st of September when we go before the BOS? Do you feel, I mean, I doubt very seriously I keep my mouth shut the whole time, but if you could certainly open up the discussion and make those points that you just discussed, I think that would be is definitely where where my heart is in this matter. I can't speak for Walter, but
yeah, and I think you would be able to go into the specifics, but if I talk about transparency,
yeah.
And making sure that the original intent of the gift is followed through.
Yeah.
And that, when people make significant gifts to the town, they really have to be looked at very carefully.
Yes.
Make sure that they will and can do what the people intended them to do.
And that they're reevaluated. I like how you put that they're reevaluated.
Yeah. I'd like to make the point that really there is no oversight of the trustees by any of the other organizations in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's a break in the whole check and balance system.
Right. There isn't a check and balance here.
Right.
Yeah.
For the record, I've been playing with some online calculators as we've been talking here. That $40,500 bequeath that was the residue of Emma Scribner's estate that was put into the trust fund in 1936. Inflation over that whole entire time is averaged 3.5%. My calculations a couple weeks ago were on 3%.
Right.
0.5%. When she died and left that money, that was the equivalent of leaving $754,000 today. Which, yes, if you figure a building that age, you should be putting away annually 3 to 5% of the building's assessed value. Really, the market value. You should be putting that away in projects, maintenance and upkeep, which would be sufficient based on just the income generated from that trust, not even a fraction of the principal, but just the income generated on $750,000 would be well more than enough to take care of it. But that just speaks to the fact that, yes, there's been a history of no oversight and management and understanding basic financial monetary concepts.
Yeah, and the building was never ever maintained like a public building would be maintained.
No, absolutely. I mean, the kitchen's beautiful because everything in it's circa 1936, but the kitchen's also not functional kitchen because it's circa 1936.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's an historical kitchen, but that doesn't do us any good,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That wonderful soapstone sink can be used in a modern kitchen, but everything else around it hasn't been touched in 84 years.
Yeah.
So, these are the kinds of things that we really haven't looked at a lot in the town, not just not just as the trustees, but every department across the list hasn't, with certain exceptions, they haven't really looked at their assets and how they should be maintained and what it actually costs to maintain them in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's another argument for having a CIP and asset management plans and
Right.
so forth. And because now we're facing a pretty big expense for the library building.
Right.
That we didn't really have to face.
And I think also I was walking my dog tonight, and one of my neighbors had some questions. It had to do with where she could pay her electric bill, and now at town hall, and I was explaining that. And Ashland has several problems. One of which is it just owns too many buildings, and in my opinion. And as we're going forward with the Scribner building, we're now got a water and sewer building, we've got an electric building, we've got a lot of buildings. We have a lot of buildings in some pretty severe states of disrepair, like our town hall and our police station. And as we begin, the BOS will begin playing, maybe a shell game of trying to move and, hopefully, upgrade, figure out what we're going to do. There's a lot of property that the town of Ashland owns. That was a lot of property, one of which is the Scribner building.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think that, I think Dave will do an excellent job, bringing out that, we start with some problems of transparency and gift tracing. And it really kind of has a much bigger problem, as you said, that you need capital, and investment, what is the C? It's got a whole
capital improvement plan.
There you go, capital improvement plan. But this does need to really be considered, because it comes and bites you in some fairly small ways, like Scribner, which become really big ways because things weren't done right.
And without an awareness of, the people who ran these things were not aware of CIPs and asset management.
Right.
When those things came in, they pushed them away and they didn't want to hear about it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and now we're, it's not an insoluble problem, but it's a bigger problem than we needed to have.
Right.
And in a town that is as strapped for money as we are, we are the poorest town in the entire county.
Yeah.
We can't afford to make those mistakes.
Right.
So, okay, well, I will do that, and I'll probably get back with you before that meeting and go over this again.
Sure.
Because I do have senior moments,
So put together your talking points and send them to Walter and me, and we will make sure that we'll probably add what we would say.
Okay, well,
yeah,
I will be glad to do that.
Great.
I'll try to be as concise as possible.
Great. So then our next meeting, I would say, will probably be in January, the third Monday of January, unless Charlie sends me an email saying you need some CRF signed, in which case that's not really much of a meeting. As we all learned, it's not that hard to do.
Nothing about it.
Yeah, so far nothing's bounced, or I haven't heard of anything bouncing, so that's good. Okay, very good. Then see, I can look on my calendar and get our next meeting date so that we can have that in the minutes.
It would be the fourth Monday of January, right?
Fourth, you're right, which would be the 25th.
Okay.
January 25th.
So, in the meantime, as I'm moving things to Vanguard, there will be paperwork for both of you to sign.
Okay.
So as it comes around. So right now, we just need David, I just need your paperwork for me to be able to move Scribner. They want to have all 3 current trustees' information on the accounts, and then I'll be able to move it from Wells Fargo. Everything except for the unit investment trust will be able to move. That'll just need to be liquidated beforehand because they can't accept that. And then it'll be a very similar process for Memorial Park and the Blake Firefighters Fund.
What do you need what information do you need from me?
The information that they need, let's see, sent. Look that up. And that's going to be, okay. So it's 2 pages, and it's your name, date of birth, telephone number, social security number, your address, and then your signature.
Okay. Do you want to, where do you want to, you want to meet at the town hall for me to do that, or drop it off at the town hall and I'll go over and sign it?
Sure. I can print it, drop it off at town hall for you.
Okay.
And if you go in and fill it out, and when you're done, I will scan it, send it to Vanguard, destroy the originals.
Okay.
And once that's done, then the account will be set up and I'll be okay to move things over.
All right. Okay. I'm going to be away tomorrow, so I'll look for it on Wednesday.
Okay. All right.
Okay, one thing, Walter, while we're talking money and funds, even though this is Scribner,
Yeah.
I've got about 5,000 in the Scribner account checking.
Okay.
I'm going to get a wallop bill from a wallop of a bill from the plumber.
Okay.
I'm going to get a nice size bill from, we got roofing going on, $7,500 for the roof.
Okay.
I haven't got the electric bill yet. He wasn't there very long replacing exit lighting. So, and my point is the 5,000 is going to go pretty quick.
So what I think I'm going to do is, because our plan was to put 15,000 in money markets when we moved it to Vanguard.
Okay.
But what I could do is liquidate that unit investment trust now, which I'm looking that up, I think would free up about 12,000 and change.
Yeah, that will do. That will be great. I just want to be sure.
I think that makes the most sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. When you said that, that's what's going through my mind. Just liquidate that because I'm going to need the cash.
Okay. So what I will do is I will print the paperwork that David needs to sign, and I will contact Wells Fargo and have them liquidate that so it's available for you to request a check or an electronic fund transfer, however you've done it before.
Okay. Yeah. Wells Fargo. Yeah. I just request a check. Okay. Yep. They do it automatically. They wire it in.
Oh, perfect.
Which is nice. Okay, great. So until January 25th, actually until I guess September 21st, we'll be at the BOS meeting. We're on the agenda.
Okay.
Until our next Scribner meeting, which would be the second, I think it's going to be the same day as a BOS meeting on the 8th because of, or the 7th. No, the 7th is Labor Day. We'll have the 14th is the Scribner, and that's going to be the same night as the Board of Selectmen meeting, but that's just because of Labor Day holiday. Mm-hmm. So, okay. See you then. Thank you very much.